Hey guys, Ezra here. Today I will be editing this photograph, and the main focus of this tutorial will be about enhancing an image that isn't perfectly lighted, because this photograph was taken on the beach during sunset and we were a little late and the light wasn't great and the clouds were forming. So I will try to make this photograph look very vivid, alive and warm. So again, as usual, I am shooting in RAW, so I will put my photograph first in develop persona, which is kind of the raw development program for photographs in Affinity Photo. So I am playing with the adjustments here to light up the image, to put more focus on the model than the background, and to tone down the background, the highlights more. And the greatness of shooting in RAW is that you can always recover lost information with your RAW editing programs. And I'm upping the exposure a little bit to bring more light into the photograph. I have toned down the highlights and I have lifted the shadows a little so we can see more of the detail. And let's see how this is going. And as you can see, the photograph is already much lighter and warmer. And I will also defringe and see what the lens correction can do for us. And I'm moving on to details. In the details section, you can see detail refinement and noise reduction, because the light conditions weren't really perfect and that caused some noise to appear in the photograph. And the noise reduction tool is really helpful for photographs like these to reduce the grain and make the image cleaner. And also detail refinement will give us a lot more detail and a little more sharpness, but in a nice way. So I press apply, and now we have our background layer, and I just copied it by pressing Command J, and then I will first crop my image. Because I like to crop the image before I do any masking and going layer on layer, because it's going to be much easier to apply everything on the complete photograph. So 45 is my go-to ratio with portraits, and in this photograph I don't have to stretch the image because she is far away, and I get everything that I need in the photograph like that. First I will go into selective color, and with selective color you can really play with the mood of your photograph individually by adjusting each color that you have in your photograph. And reds are usually for skin tones, and neutrals are usually affecting the whole of the photograph, like almost every part of the photograph. And here I am mainly trying to create a warm, nice magenta-like color for the environment. And I'm also upping the brightness a little and the contrast a little to put the focus more on the model than on the background. As you can see, the model is already much brighter and much more as the main subject in the photograph. So I will just mask this layer because I want the model to stand out in the photograph. And by creating a mask, I can paint on it with black, and black hides and white reveals. So when I paint with my black brush, I can hide the adjustment that I've done from the area that I'm painting on. So it's quite simple: white reveals and black hides. So right now I am hiding the adjustment, the brightness and contrast adjustment from the background, which will leave the adjustment visible only on the model, which will make her much lighter and much more contrasted than the background. And this will in return put the main focus on the model, while leaving the background a little more toned down behind her. So I'm carefully going around her, and if you like, you can use a smaller brush when you're doing the detail work. So let's see what we've done, and you can also make the adjustment that you're applying really visible, like bring the brightness up to 100 and the contrast up to like a 50, or brightness up to 90. It doesn't really matter, and that way you can really see where the adjustment is still visible and where you've deleted it from the background. So right now it's almost done, I think. Maybe a little more between her 2 feet. And she's already much more dominant in the photograph. She was like wiped out by all the shadows and all the darkness that was put. But right now she's much more like the main subject, like the main focus. And now I'm moving on to exposure, and I will increase the exposure, and again with the same technique I will mask it from the background and I will leave it evident only on the model so that she becomes much brighter and lighter. And the background, because we're deleting it from the background, will remain the same. So I'm using a pretty big brush here. But of course, if the model is taking up much more space in your photograph, be careful and use a smaller brush, and try to be more refined than I am. So I'm trying to be careful. I'm using a tablet, by the way. I'm not using a mouse, which makes it a little easier for me to control what I'm doing. So I'll just go over all those areas where I think I can still see some exposure adjustment. So it made it much better. I think she stands out much better than before. Let's see what we've done so far. I really love where this is going. And let's apply some gradient maps. And this glow adjustment that I've done, which is going from pink to orange to pink and set to glow, was a little too much, but I'm going to put it on overlay or soft light, I think, and about 5% is enough. And it really adds this sunset mood to the photograph, which I'm loving. So now I'm back to selective color, which gives me really a lot of control on how I'm affecting each individual color. Sure, and I'm talking back and forth to see what you've done. Really helps to decide whether or not it's working. And as you can see here, I have inverted this layer. So I didn't apply a mask because basically I didn't want the selective color adjustment layer to be evident on the model. I wanted to be applied only to the background, and because it's easier to brush on to the background than the model, because the model is taking up much smaller portion of the photograph and I can go in with a bigger brush on the background, I will invert the layer, which will basically make it invisible unless I paint with white on a certain area where I want it to be applied, because white again reveals. So to invert a layer, by the way, you just press Command and I. So now I'm applying a lens filter, which the default color is orange, which goes really nicely, I think, for this mood. So I'm trying to decide how strong I want it to be. So I go back and forth. Maybe it's a little too much on the skin tones, I'm not really sure. but I love it on the background. I think I will just lower the opacity a little bit. And that will be perfect. So I'm just checking my histogram to see whether or not the adjustments that I'm doing are actually working. And the histogram is basically showing you the balance of your highlights and your shadows. And right now, because the main spikes are in the middle and on the right, which the right side is resembling the highlights and the left side is showing you your shadows, I think it's pretty alright. I'm just doing one more brightness and contrast adjustment. I am masking it again because I wanted to affect only the model and not the background. So I'm taking my black and I'm painting on the background again. And this is where masks come in really handy because sometimes, like most of the time I think, if you're adjusting something in a photograph, you don't want it to be applied to everything that you can see in a photograph. You just want it to be applied to a certain area in a certain way. And by using masks, you can really make sure that the adjustment that you've just done will be applied only on your desired area. So it's not going to affect the whole of the photograph. So I think she is really standing out and the mood is really lovely. It's a warm, beautiful summer sunset and I'm really happy how this is going. And I added 3 more layers which are basically exposure, shadows and highlight, and a vibrance layer. And the vibrance layer is basically making the colors more vibrant and adding much more life to the photograph. So and the shadows layer, I just lifted the shadows a little and I lowered the highlights a little, and I am balancing that out with an exposure adjustment. And I'm again masking it from the background because I don't want it to be seen on the background. I want the background to stand back and the model to be the main focus in the photograph. So I'm deleting the adjustment, exposure adjustment again from the background by using a mask and my black color. I'm taking a smaller brush and doing really fine detail work here because the only spot where I want the exposure to be increased is the sun, basically, because I want the sun to stand out as well to give it this nice sunset mood. The sun was a little muted down because of all the adjustments that I've did because of all the masking that I did. So this brings back the life to the sun a little. And I'm trying to see where I have to delete it still. Your eyes can get used to a certain degree of lightness or a certain color very quickly, so toggling back and forth is kind of the best solution to be able to see more clearly, to be able to see what you still need to do to change and make the image a little better. And I think this works really nicely, and I think I will leave it on the sand because the sand was a little too dark as well, and this kind of balanced it, like it's supporting the way the model is looking. It's working nicely. So before and after, it's really nice. Now I'm just copying the background layer and I'm going to filters, sharpen and high pass. My cat, sorry. And the high pass layer is basically a nice way to sharpen the image. You will just get a gray layer, and then when you move to overlay soft light or hard light, you will see your image is sharpened. So soft light is a little softer, hard light is harder, and overlay is kind of in the middle. So this really works nicely. Let's do another before and after. I really love using layers. It just adds to a photograph in such a natural way without being too much. So I'm just going to add another highlight layer and a shadow layer, and these layers are actually used for dodge and burn. And if you don't know, dodge and burn is a technique to use in skin retouch, and you can also use it on clothing, on hair, and it's basically that you create your presets of a highlight, a shadow, and a contrast layer. And right now I'm painting on the highlight layer, and as you can see, the layer is inverted, and to reveal it, to make it lighter in an area, I'm using my white color with my brush, and I'm painting on that layer to make it visible on the area that I'm painting on. So here I am making the shadow a little stronger, and this will define the legs better, but we want this backlit image, and here comes the highlight and shadow layers, the dodge and burn, to our help, and we're just accentuating where the natural shadows and highlights are, on the legs, on the clothing, on the hair, and even on the face. And I'm not pressing hard at all, I'm just really gently going over them. I'm switching to my highlight here to light up the face even more. I'm just very softly going over the tablet, very softly. And as you can see, just brightened it up really beautifully. And again, some redness on the neck, can get rid of it. And accentuating the curves. And try to apply the shadows and the highlights only where you can see them naturally, you know, or where they should be naturally. So as you can see, the figure is much more defined, and yeah, I really like how it looks. It's not much work at all with dodge and burn. So it's beautiful, really warm tone. We got what we went for, so I'm exporting the image. Press export and save, and here you have it. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it was helpful, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!